I'd like to conclude this series of lectures on intervals by discussing a few aspects of them, and they will be alterations, extensions and inversions. Alright, so let's first discuss alterations. What happens is that we refer to an alteration as simply being the change made to an existing interval. Okay, so for example, I might be playing in the key of C major. Now, it's worth pointing out that all the notes, all the intervals in a major scale are either major or perfect. So it's major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and then the octave. Okay, so let's say that I want to add a little bit of tension to this scale. And by that I want to concentrate on the second interval, the major second, and instead of having a major second, I'd like to sharpen that interval. In other words, I'm now playing an Ionian sharpened second scale. Alright, so you can really hear the difference that change in the second makes. Okay, so when it comes to naming the type and quality of this altered second, one may suspect that because minor thirds follow major seconds that we simply call it a minor third interval, but we don't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, we've started with a second type interval. It therefore follows that no matter what we do in terms of alteration, it must stay a second type interval of some kind, because we already have a third present anyway, and that's the major third. So we don't have a minor third and a major third, then the rest. We need a type of each interval, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and so we need to come up with a name for this new second interval, even though it's enharmonic equivalent. It's same distance is a minor third interval. Now, as it turns out, if we take a major interval and we sharpen it, we've augmented it. Similarly, if we take a major interval and we flatten it, it's minor. Now, if we were to take a minor type interval, quality, then if we sharpen it, it becomes major, and if we flatten it, it becomes diminished. If we take perfect intervals and we sharpen them, they become augmented, and if we flatten perfect intervals, they become diminished. Diminished intervals, when flattened, become doubly diminished, and when sharpened, become either minor or perfect. And they're the sorts of rules that we need to consider when it comes to naming intervals, and it's very important in the context of scales and chords to have that sort of structure to it, so that we have a language that makes sense and which describes exactly what it is that we're doing in terms of altering things. Now, the next thing to discuss is the so-called extensions, and as the name suggests, it's just going into an octave above the intervals that we've studied thus far. Okay, so let's just say that I'm playing a C5 interval, perfect fifth. If I wanted to go an octave above that fifth and return to the C, I'm suddenly in the second octave. Now 5 plus 7 is 12, so I'm playing a perfect 12th. The reason why we consider these types of things is as we've built up the theory thus far, we've found that in tertial harmony, chords are arrived at by stacking thirds on top of each other. So if we go some quality of third from the root, we get some quality of third. If we go another third from that, we get a fifth. If we go another third from that, we get a seventh. And then if we go another third from that, we get a ninth, and then 11th, and then 13th. And they're called 9th, 11th and 13th because they appear in the second octave above where the root is. Similarly, in between those we have 8ths, 10ths and 12ths and 14ths. Okay, so the rules that we've built up this far still apply to those. There's no difference in that. It's just that their name reflects the fact that they're more than an octave above the root. Now, the final thing that I would like to discuss, and this is a pretty handy sort of rule of thumb to know, because we want to now discuss intervals in inversion. Inversion simply means reversing the order in which the interval appears. So for example, let's just say I'm playing on the top two strings and I decide to play a C perfect fifth interval. So I start at C and I go to G. I've treated C as a root, G as a perfect fifth above it. Alternatively, what happens if I was to consider that G was the root and I'm going down to the C? I've inverted the interval. So what can I say about the type and quality of this new interval? And the rule of thumb is that the intervallic types always sum to 9. In other words, we initially consider the perfect fifth. 9 minus 5 is 4. So from G to C is a fourth type interval. Similarly, if I was to play a major third interval, let's just say I'm playing, I'll take this G here on the 5th fret, the 5th string at the 10th fret, and say I play its major third. So that's a major third from G. Now that note is a B. What happens if I decide to treat B as the first and work down? 9 minus 3 is 6. Therefore, in inversion, a third becomes a sixth interval. That only leaves us to consider what happens to the qualities in intervals when we invert them. And it's very simple to remember this. Minors become majors, majors become minors, diminished intervals become augmented, and augmented become diminished. Now, perfects, such as the perfect fourths and fifths, remain perfect. And that's why they're called perfect, because they're closed under inversion. In other words, if I take a perfect fifth, as I showed before, I invert it, I get a perfect fourth. If I take a perfect fourth and invert it, I get a perfect fifth. Okay, so now let's just say that I'm playing from A and I play its minor third. Now let's just say that I decided to make that third the new root. What is A in relation to that when coming down? 9 minus 3 is 6, so we know we've got a sixth type interval. From C to A, therefore, is a sixth type interval. Now, because we started with a major type interval, from C to A is now a minor type interval. Sorry, we started with a minor type interval, it's now a major type interval. So just to recap my mistake, from A to C is a minor third, therefore from C down to A is a major sixth. So they're the general rules of thumb. You'll find all the information that you need that explains this and the alterations extensions in the notes on our website. So have a go at it. If you have any questions, please contact us. Otherwise, I hope that you've found this series of videos on intervals useful, and I hope that it really helps you playing and that you've learned a lot from it. All the best.